So without further ado, Christopher, come on up, let me introduce you. And
Well, Mayor, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks everyone for coming out. I've met, walked, talked, dined, argued with so many of you over the past 9 months since I announced that I was running, and it's great to see some new friends and some new guests and folks who are just here to learn. So I am Christopher Cabaldon, and I served for the most of the last 20 years as the mayor in West Sacramento. And as Mayor McConnell said, our city was challenged. We were the poorest city in the metropolitan region. We were deeply, deeply disrespected by everyone else in the region. But also that disrespect had made it into our own hearts, and we didn't even have much hope. We liked our community. It was a great place to live, but we just felt like it wasn't going to get any better. We were a poor, working class immigrant community, and this is as good as it gets. We can't demand better parks or places to shop or work. We can't have a clean waterfront. The factories that are spewing cement plant emissions or oil, that's just how it is. When I ran, I thought, no, we can do better. We can be a better community for the people that live here. Not gentrify and build a place for somebody else, but to create a community that reveals what's in our hearts and what we love about our town and our neighbors, but brings that to life. And I'm really proud, as Mayor McConnell said, of what we were able to accomplish in my city. We've still got our challenges, everyone does, you never get to perfection. But today, we're no longer the poorest city in the region. We are one of the most economically diverse cities in the region. We have jobs for every man, woman, child, all the dogs and half the cats. We have plenty of jobs in the city, most of them high-paying, family-supporting jobs. And now, in a community where education and opportunity was severely lacking, and where parents would often come to me and say, "Hey, Mayor, I love this city, but my daughter just turned 5." And the sentence would just end. And as though it was obvious what the next part was. And the next part always was, and so we're moving to Davis because their daughter was just entering the public school system. Or my daughter is going to high school next year, and again, period. As though that meant, obviously we're leaving and moving to another community. You can't have a healthy place, and you can't have a workforce that makes your community thrive in a place where families feel like they are doing wrong by their kids to raise them. So we launched what became what President Obama said was the most comprehensive college and career initiative in the entire country. And we are half the size of Vallejo. We're not a big city. We're not rich. But we were able to provide universal preschool for every child in the city long before anyone else had done it. We also opened a college savings account and put money in it for every single child entering kindergarten. Every high school student that wants to do a college and career internship, we guarantee a paid internship for them to build skills and opportunity in the workplace. We're one of the first California cities to provide debt-free community college, tuition-free community college to every single one of our graduating high school students. We also, now we offer a scholarship program for all high school students for any college or university based on the community service they do in town. Today, parents no longer say, "I'm moving," when their daughter turns 5 or enters high school. Now they know that they are in a place that believes in them and is a great place to raise a family. It's a great place to grow up. And to me, it's an example of how we can make transformative improvements in our communities. And we didn't have $1 billion. We weren't rich, but you can make big changes that really matter in people's lives and connect them to the opportunities that are there. We can clean up the environment. We closed 2 of the petroleum plants that were right on our waterfront and the cement facility that was on our waterfront. We closed them and said they're too close to neighborhoods. If you want to move over to the port, you can. One of them chose to. The other 2 said, we don't actually need to operate here anymore. And now we have healthier air, less asthma. It is a community where the environment is celebrated and people can enjoy the heritage in a healthy way, trails and paths like several of us have walked together on Mayor Island, that bring together the community in a way that we're really, really proud of. So I know it can work. At the same time, we're the biggest housing producer in the district. West Sacramento is in the top 15 statewide in producing housing because we're committed to making it affordable. Because we are committed to being a place where you can live your whole life in our community, no matter how your circumstances might change, no matter whether you've got 4 kids or you're downsizing or you're just coming out of the Air Force, whatever your life circumstances, there has to be a place in our community that you can afford to live in. So we're one of the top producers. At the same time, we cut our future development footprint. So we said we're not going to grow in any more farmland or bulldoze any more habitat. We're just going to grow on the land that we already have. And it's not like it's unoccupied, but there's an old gas station over there, a parking lot over there. There's plenty of land, it turns out, in our urban communities that we can recycle, where there's already sewer and water and sidewalks and maybe some decent transit. There's already jobs. Reinvesting in that place has really made a difference. So in virtually every way, our community is better. We cut unsheltered homelessness in our city by 58%. And then, we did that 10 years ago. But then for 10 years after that, no increase. When every other city around us in Yolo County and Sacramento County was experiencing a crisis, we were able to make sure that folks got access to housing. If you've heard of Project Room Key or permanent supportive housing or any of those initiatives, in almost every case, we were one of the first cities in the state to do that, to innovate, to try to create new solutions. We don't pretend that we have all the answers on homelessness, but we do have ideas and we're willing to try them. And the state of California has to do that too, and then support communities and cities and nonprofits and healthcare providers in order to make those solutions come true. Along the way, I was able to secure $4 billion of state and federal money for my city, for levies, for dredging, for healthcare facilities, for schools, for community college. Just, you run down the line. Now, $4 billion is still a lot of money. We're a city of 45,000 people. But I learned that the tricks to getting state and federal grants, and also how so many of the formulas are biased against communities like ours. It's no surprise. I mean, I used to work in the legislature a long time ago, and when Willie Brown was speaker, he basically told all of us on the staff, make sure all the formulas send all the money to San Francisco. And then, when other legislators took over from LA, they said the same thing. So a lot of the grants and other dollars that are out there, they're not designed to come to places like ours. And so we have to rewrite those rules. So that's one of the reasons, and probably the most powerful reason why I'm running for the Senate, is that I've seen when we get it right, when we fight the right battles, when we go out there and we fix those broken, biased rules, when we stand up for people and for activists that are trying to make better communities, that we can make a big difference. My community is so different today. And I want to be under the Capitol Dome to fight for communities across the 3rd District, but most especially, and I say this all throughout the district, so nobody's going to catch me on tape saying something different, that I also said the exact opposite in Woodland or Calistoga, but most especially here at Vallejo. Vallejo, in so many ways, coming from the community that I've come from, I see so many of the same, we're brothers in our challenges, but also in our immense potential. And the state has to be, and I want to fight hard to make the state a partner, an investor in this community in particular. It's what fired me up to run in the first place, and so that's why I'm running for the Senate. I'm really proud to have the support of a lot of folks here in town and throughout the state as well, and throughout our district. And I hope we'll have a chance to talk about some of the specific issues in just a moment through your questions. But on issues like the Flannery California Forever project as an example, and protecting our water and transportation and transit and tolls, and the mayor and I we talk a lot about dredging, so that might come up too. But the full range of those issues. But the Sierra Club has endorsed my campaign. I'm the sole endorsed candidate of the Sierra Club, as well as the Solano County Orderly Growth Committee, because we're committed to protecting our environmental heritage, our public health, and our open space and our agriculture in this county. And just, you may have received just as an aside, you might have gotten in your mailbox in the last couple of days one of those really dark, scary smear mailers. I was saying we had a debate last night at Benicia High School, the high school debate team put on, and I said, this week both Taylor Swift and I were the victims of a deep fake campaign. Mine was not as bad, but if you saw this mailer, I know someone brought them. Yeah, you got the mailer here. So there's a picture of me that is me signing a check to anti-choice Republicans on behalf of Kevin McCarthy, and then there's another one that's all these dark, all these shadows and dollar bills flying all over the place. Well, this picture of me signing this check is actually the real picture is from me signing a proclamation at the White House with President Biden 3 months ago, declaring Filipino American heritage, but it had nothing to do with this anymore. But this is where we are in politics today, where we can say anything. But the crazy part about this one is we're saying the opposite, because there is just one candidate that's been endorsed by Planned Parenthood and Reproductive Freedom for All. If you remember NARAL, the National Abortion Rights Action League, they're now Reproductive Freedom for All. Both Planned Parenthood and NARAL have endorsed just one candidate in the race, and it's me. Because we've worked together for 2 decades fighting for reproductive health and for reproductive freedom, and because what's in front of us isn't just an abstract commitment to choice and to reproductive freedom. Every Democratic candidate will tell you that they support reproductive freedom, so that's no big revelation. In fact, we had a debate last night about this. What's different is that Planned Parenthood knows I'm going to be a warrior on the actual day-to-day issues that we need to fight. Number one is privacy rights. We have women coming to California, for example, for reproductive health services and for abortions, who are being hunted by their attorney general back home in Arkansas or Georgia or what have you. And it is absolutely essential that we protect the privacy rights both of those women, but also of the healthcare workers here in California. Because if you are a nurse or a doctor or another healthcare worker involved, and that information is released to the Attorney General of Texas, and then you go to Texas, you have violated their rights. Right? So it's absolutely essential. It's not just about our altruism for women in other states, but it is about that, but it's just about that. It's about making sure that we protect reproductive freedom in the Constitution and in our laws, but also in daily practice. We have other cities in California, very, very liberal cities, who've passed resolutions declaring their support for reproductive freedom, who then turn around and deny zoning permits for reproductive health clinics because it's controversial. So in California, we still have a lot of work to do to champion for reproductive freedom for real, not just in the abstract. California voters voted overwhelmingly in the last election to amend the Constitution to enshrine reproductive freedom in it. Now it's our job in the Senate to make sure that holds and that we deliver on it every single day. So I'm really, you can tell I'm fired up. I'm really proud to have Planned Parenthood and Reproductive Freedom for All's endorsement, as well as the Sierra Club and every single Democratic club in Solano County and the entire district that has endorsed in this race. So I know Planned Parenthood is very upset about this mailer. If you've seen it, more is going to come because that's just the state of politics today. But it's outrageous, and it's just a marker of how awful the sort of the MAGA approach to there's no truth and just say whatever you can and hope something sticks. But now you know kind of the facts behind it. So why don't I stop there with just the brief information, and the mayor's gonna take some of your questions, I think, and quiz me.
Now, these are not my questions. They were handed to me, and for incidentally, if anybody does desire a question but just doesn't want to personally ask it, write it down and I'll ask it. I'm good at that. Number one, what will you do as state senator to proactively, to protect reproductive freedom?
Okay, I think I just answered that. Those are two policy examples. The other piece I want to emphasize, though, is that California, we do have model policies on reproductive freedom. We're one of the best in the country. But as we've seen, even with Roe versus Wade, as the most fundamental, established, settled legal precedent, the court was willing to just toss it. And every time we do something here in California, 5 times out of 10, some court, often the Supreme Court, is going to overturn it. So we have to keep at it. We cannot rest on our laurels and just say we have great policies. We have to keep innovating. So the governor's proposal will potentially make abortion medication produced here in California. That I support that kind of more innovative, aggressive tactics to try to make sure that we're right there on the front lines with women as well.
Okay, 2, California has a shortage of 3.5 million homes, record homeless. What do you intend to do as state senator to address this issue?
Great. So as I said, this is one of the reasons why I'm running, because I've come from a city where we have successfully built a lot of housing, mostly affordable, and where we have grappled, as well as anyone, with the epidemic of folks who are living unhoused on the streets of our cities and communities in California. But I've also learned how hard that is, and how so many of the rules make it hard and the funding programs make it difficult. So one, on housing, I support the state's intense policy making on this issue and the threats the state's always making to local communities, saying you've got to build more housing. We do. But what's wrong with the state housing policy that's out there now is that it's all written from the perspective of San Francisco, Oakland, and Los Angeles. It's no surprise those are the legislators that really have dived in and just like, I'm going to work on housing all the time. And they're writing it all with the right intentions, but they live in places where the economics of housing, the economics of community are not the same as downtown San Francisco. So when we want to build, a 5-story, beautiful mixed-use, coffee shop on the first floor, and grandma lives on the 5th floor, and grandkids are in childcare on the first floor. A thoroughly modern, sustainable, walkable, wonderful place that any of us would be proud to call home. That's very easy to build in San Francisco. In fact, a developer would come forward and say, oh, I'll build that, but I want to make it 40 stories big. But, so the only thing standing in the way is a couple of government regulations. Maybe the city requires too many parking spaces or something. So the legislature's been passing laws to say, don't require so many parking spaces, and try to make sure it's at least 20 stories high. But that's not the holdup in Vallejo or American Canyon or Benicia or West Sacramento. I have 7,000 housing units in West Sacramento that have been zoned and approved that aren't getting built right now. It's because the housing builders, whether they're nonprofit affordable housing developers or others, or the private sector, they can't get the financing to build a lot of that kind of housing. So one problem is the market to build housing is a lot harder in our communities because it's untested for a lot of these big developers. They're used to 20-story projects in San Francisco, but in much of Solano and Yolo County, and Napa County too, they're ready to sign up for, like, will you build a subdivision like Flannery style? Will you build something out in the middle of a farmland? That we know how that will work. So we'll give you a loan for that. Oh, you want to build, a co-housing or social housing project in downtown Vallejo? Well, we've never seen that before, so we're not sure we're going to fund it. So number one, it's really hard to finance. So the state of California has to provide more tools. We have to provide more support legally and financially for things like accessory dwelling units that are happening here and throughout the state, the Assembly, the Senate district. And they have a huge potential. Like I said earlier, that's like recycling the land that we already have and to create communities. But we need more resources and more legal tools to make that possible as well. And then last, we have to fix these funding formulas. There are so many of these state pots of money. The state says, here Vallejo, here Benicia, here West Sacramento, here American Canyon, here's some money to help you build housing. But this money, it goes out to communities who have a housing project, here's the kicker, that is within walking distance of a transit line that runs every 15 minutes. Now, I'm a geeky, sustainable land use nerd and a transit supporter. That's really good policy to have housing near transit that runs every 15 minutes. The problem is there isn't 2 square inches of the 3rd Senate district that has every 15-minute transit service. So basically you've said nowhere in these counties will any of this state money go. In order to build 15-minute transit, you need the people. In order for the people to move in to apartments and condos and other things, you need the transit. You need them both at once. And too many of the state rules are designed for places like Oakland and San Francisco. Oh, of course, we have BART and Uni. And that's the way you should do it, and it is the way you should do it. But that's not the way it exists in the real world. So one of my tasks in the Senate is to fight to change, not just to fight to get one more dollar, but to change the rules and to change the funding criteria so places like Solano County, Yolo County, Napa County can build the kind of communities that they want to build and to create the housing that we so desperately need.
Okay, I've been asked a few more questions. First, what can you do to stop the Metropolitan Transit Commission from overreaching with tolling Highway 37 and tolling all freeway lanes and freeway pricing?
Well, this is a huge issue, obviously, throughout the state and throughout the district, but it's definitely at a head on Highway 37. And let me say first, I haven't been on the Highway 37 committee. I've been doing all the work. Senator Dodd and local officials have been doing that. And it would be very easy to just swoop in and say, hey, I have all the answers. I do not have all the answers. There are some tough choices that have had to be made here. And the Highway 37 project itself, really, really, really critical. In order to protect the habitat and the natural environment in the marsh along the corridor, and to protect access to jobs and employment for the folks who depend on Highway 37. So it's a really critical project. We shouldn't minimize that. At the same time, we don't have a strategy in California on Highway 37, on the toll lanes that are appearing all along Interstate 80, actually, including in my own county as well. We don't have any approach for what to do about commuters in particular who depend on that corridor and cannot afford those tolls. We just don't have that. Now, in the history of tolling in California, especially in Northern California, we've used tolling on routes where we have alternatives. You don't like the toll on the Bay Bridge? Get on BART, right? Or we have something that you can do. If the toll is puts prices you out of reach, or means you can't afford to get one more hour of childcare, when the tolling becomes an issue, you have an alternative. And we want folks to get out of the cars if they can and use transit and other alternatives. But Highway 37 is a great example. We do not have that. We don't have anything approaching a reliable, high-frequency, affordable transit option for most of the commuters, most of whom are coming from here, and cannot afford a really expensive toll regime. And so this is a failure of government to deliver the alternatives that are needed so that folks don't have to pay those tolls and can contribute to cleaner air, to better, less congestion by using transit, but we haven't done that. So I do support the development of the smart rail connection from Sonoma Marin to Solano. I recognize it's an expensive project, and a very expensive project. So it's not going to happen tomorrow, but we do need to provide and focus on those transit alternatives. Another set of alternatives, in addition to carpooling and others, is we are seeing more and more cities and counties experiment with microtransit that is subsidized. We were one of the first in the state to do that. We won a national award for it, and basically said, look, there's not enough riders in a lot of neighborhoods in West Sacramento, or places here like Edinburgh. You're never going to get enough riders to support a regular bus line with 40 seats on a bus. And so could we offer something that feels a little bit more like Uber, right? It's kind of on-demand, what we call on-demand transit. But could we do it through the public sector so it only costs the same as a bus? So we experimented with that. We proved that you could do it. And it's turning out to be a very good transit option in places that don't have the density, the housing density that exists in Oakland or in San Francisco or elsewhere. So I think we need more of that. We need more alternatives and experiments that will provide good options for folks of all incomes to be able to get to the jobs that they need to put food on the table and pay the rent.
Okay, next. Final question I have from the audience. What do you think about California forever?
Okay, I'm hesitating only because I have a lot to say about California forever. Some of you may have watched the state Senate hearing on Flannery before it was California forever. Back in August, just before they revealed who they were, the state Senate convened a hearing in which Congressman Garamendi and I and others testified on what the potential dangers were of this unknown shady company that was acquiring a good portion of Solano County, and we didn't know who they were or what for. And the issues were certainly about Travis. First and foremost was the impact on Travis Air Force Base and the threats both on the land use but on the air corridors too. But then also my testimony was largely about, well, what about the water? What about food security? What about ag security? What about energy and the windmills and the solar and SMUD and everything else that's out of this location? What's going to be the impact of whoever's doing this? A few days later, they finally came public and said, no, it's just us. We just want to build a city of the future for what turned out to be 400,000 people. And now we have their actual proposal. And I would say, first, I think that the core idea, like we need to build a lot more housing and we need to really focus on sustainable, balanced, walkable communities is exactly right. That's exactly what we should be doing, both in California and our district and our county. The question then is this the right place? Is this the right project? And is it the right project just in economic terms for Solano County too? And I think the answer on all of those is no. And I didn't rush to this. I tried to keep an open mind along the way. But I think there are a couple of major problems here. One are the environmental impacts, of which we only know a handful, because one of the key features of this project is that there's no environmental impact report being done until after the decision. And if you know much about environmental impact reports, you know all of California law is based on the idea that before any public agency decides something, you have to ask the question, what's it going to do? Like, what's the impact? Is it going to create polluted air? Is it going to add a lot of traffic? You're required by law to ask that question. If you're the mayor or county supervisor, you must ask the question. The answer doesn't always mean you can't do the project. If it comes back and says that there's going to be some traffic, it doesn't mean you can't do it. But you must at least make an informed decision about things that are so profoundly important. This one doesn't do that. It's exploiting a loophole that the courts opened up a couple of years ago that the legislature tried to change 6 years ago but wasn't able to do. They said you don't have to do an environmental impact report when it's a ballot initiative. So almost by design, we're not getting any of the answers on the environment that we need. And so you can't, and no one, in no case should we be walking in blind when we don't know what all the implications are for water, for habitat, for traffic in particular. And I was just saying traffic in particular, even though it might seem far away, the ballot measure talks about improvements to Highway 113 and to 12. It doesn't say a word, not one word about Highway 4 or 80 or any of the rest. And no matter how walkable a community is, and I've been to many of them, in no walkable community do people never leave. In every walkable community, most people still commute somewhere else. Even if there's the same number, I know there's at least one plan here, speaking on Kenya as well. Even when there's a thing called the jobs housing balance and the community has the right number of jobs for the right amount of housing, it's never the case that even most people live in the place that they work. So you have to plan for that. But there's nothing in the measure that accounts for 80. And so the traffic impacts, for example, and then the air quality impacts, the asthma that's already hitting a lot of Solano County hard, would just get worse. So that's part of the problem. But one other fundamental problem with the ballot measure, and I think it's a really important one, because the main selling point of it is all the guarantees that are in the ballot measure. And we guarantee that there'll be this many jobs. We guarantee down payment assistance for home buyers. We guarantee $100 million for existing communities like Vallejo. So here's all the goodies that we are guaranteeing as part of this proposal. But the problem is none of them are real. There isn't a single enforceable guarantee in the ballot measure. On what? The only thing that's real in the ballot measure is giving Flannery the ability to build. The zoning changes, the general plan changes that are needed, those will take effect the day that the county clerk certifies the election. So the county, if we all vote and it passes, the county clerk says, okay, congratulations, the yes votes win. On that same day, the general plan and the zoning changes so that it is possible to build the California Fair project. But then there's the second half of the ballot measure, and the second half says, here's the guarantees that I just mentioned, but there's a couple of words before the word guarantee that you should pay attention to. And those words are, it's our purpose and it's our intent. And if you're not an attorney or you never worked in the legislature like me, purpose and intent both mean not legally, like intending to have something happen does not make it so. And you can't go to court and enforce a contract or a commitment or a guarantee that is only intent. And it has to be that way, because what the ballot measure says, it doesn't even create the guarantee itself. It says to the Board of Supervisors, please go negotiate an agreement with Flannery that does these guarantees. But the problem with that is that Flannery, in a normal contract, in a normal agreement between the City of Benicia or the City of Vallejo or the City of West Sacramento and a project developer, you make a change to the general plan or the zoning in exchange for a variety of guarantees, commitments, environmental improvements, new roads, transit lines, or what have you. But you do that in a contract. It's a two-way contract. You negotiate that. But the way this ballot measure is written, Flannery gets everything that it needs out of that agreement on the day that the election is certified. And the county gets nothing until an agreement gets entered into. If you're Flannery, why would you enter into an agreement at all at that point? You just got everything you need. The value of your land has already gone up exponentially just by getting the general plan and the zoning. So I know it's complicated, and that's kind of by design, but the big challenge here is that it is all on paper and it's not real. And it can't be fixed because you're not allowed to negotiate. It's illegal to do a development agreement and negotiate one in a ballot measure. So it cannot be fixed, and the Flannery commitments can't be real. And so Solano County deserves better. The basic attitude of Flannery in this process has been, it's inevitable, it's going to happen, we will roll over you, so you're powerless to do anything about it. And I know some folks have gotten hopeless. And then second is, and I know this from my own city, for years and years of projects, you're kind of desperate, and this is the best you're going to get. You're lucky we're even talking to you. I can't tell you how many developers have said that to me as mayor, trying to convince you that you don't have any leverage, that you can't demand not just something wonderful, but just something that isn't going to rob you blind in the county. And so I have come to the position that this project is not a good project for Solano. And definitely this specific proposal is a big red flag for the people of Solano County.
So how do we kill it? How do we combat their bugs?
May I answer one of this question, Mr. Moderator?
Sorry.
Okay. So Paul, I think
Repeat the question.
yeah, so we're recording. So Paul has asked, how do we kill it? Well, a couple of things. I mean, obviously, number one, it won't be on the ballot if 13,000 people plus don't sign the petition. That's number one. So it's not inevitable it will be on the November ballot until folks sign the petition. So ask, educate yourself, ask questions, and don't just sign because you're trying to get out of the supermarket fast without knowing that that's what you want to do. Second is talk to folks about it, especially here in Vallejo. I just came from a town hall conversation in Rio Vista, and where they're in fear of their lives and their livelihood and their whole way of life. And one of their questions was, we're so worried that the people of Vallejo and Fairfield and Vacaville won't see us. They won't know what we're in for here, and they have our future in their hands. And so to keep learning and making coalitions and making connections. One thing you can also do is tomorrow is the launch of Solano Together, which is the coalition being organized locally with some support from a lot of other partners to shed light on this and oppose the project. So if you're free tomorrow, almost at the same time, then in Sioux City there's going to be the launch of that as well. But there'll be plenty of opportunities along the way to engage and to talk and to share some of the truths and some of the questions about this with other voters in the community here.
I apologize for coming in late. I was told 2 o'clock. I thought I was coming in
So there might be much more people coming in looking for it too. So you're taking questions now? You're already talking about the piece?
I did, yes.
All right. Well, if I can ever find the energy, there's two exploding populations that are in crisis and just going to get worse and worse and worse. Obviously, the unhoused, I like homeless, I think it brings up more heart, compassion. And the growing numbers, the silver tsunami of seniors like me. Retirement communities are getting unreachable, unaffordable. And the perfect, I'm trying to come up with the perfect word, like mutualism. They can solve each other's crises. If there can be lots more effort helping seniors create ADUs or junior ADUs, which means part of their house. And it's been a godsend and a lifesaver for me. I'm trying to find a non-religious term for saving grace. I mean, it solves both of each other's crises. So what can you do, because it's still a nightmare going through the permitting process. Someone said, screw the city and the permitting process. I'm just going to do it without permitting, you know? But it's one of the, I think it's brilliant. I just don't have to create a whole new movement and go talk to people, but what can you do?
Great question. The question is about what can I do to advance
Help seniors
seniors and
create ADUs.
yes, accessory dwelling units.
ADUs and find the programs, my dream is they look old job description to bring them together, to say matchmaker and help it work out. Mostly the establishing of them and then kind of matchmaking and dissolve, you know, follow.
Great. All right. So, and accessory dwelling units are, I mean, we used to call them granny flats, right? So, in-law apartments or what have you. But they're so much more now. And I talked about it a little bit earlier as well. And no, don't apologize. I think this is one of those areas. So I worked on the ADU legislation. I was a member of the AARP statewide livable communities action team, trying to cook up solutions that would create age-friendly communities throughout California. We were West Sac was one of the, along with San Francisco, we were the two first AARP national designated age-friendly communities, and one of the first 20 in the world for the World Health Organization. So I'm very committed to communities that are, because a community that's designed around either or both aging or children is a better community for everyone, right? You end up with you design streets where you're not crossing 17 lanes of road in one lane that lasts for 10 seconds. You're building accessible housing. You're building places where people can come together and connect in unexpected ways. We were one of the first to build our senior center and our early learning preschool center in the same building, which everybody said was that's a nightmare. You know, the noise is going to drive each other crazy. It would turn out to be one of the greatest experiments that we had ever undertaken. So I completely agree, and I will also just put a plug that I just supervised as a professor at Sac State. Tim's the assistant. Tim's the former president along with Young Democrats, but he was also one of my students, and he just finished his master's thesis on how we can fix California's laws and regulations and finance tools to advance more ADUs, more accessory dwelling units. So I absolutely have the energy to take this one on with you, because the potential there is already showing all around the state, and including communities like ours here. So we know that they can work. We know that they provide a lot more housing. They revitalize the neighborhoods and take advantage of the infrastructure that's already here. And they tend to be more affordable than the stuff that is being built by large corporate developers as well, for the folks that need them for either purchase or for rent. So I'm a big fan. The laws have improved a lot from the work that we were doing at AARP, but we still have a lot to do in order to advance them and to convince more communities to invest in them, and also to create more financing tools for things like ADUs, but also co-housing, social housing, and other forms of cooperative and collective housing that can reduce the cost.
Remember junior ADUs, and another thing we could throw into this argument is now the Surgeon General and a lot of talk now that social isolation has now become a higher risk factor than smoking. So it solves that too. The social emotional health for seniors.
Yeah. I'm not talking, and then I'll come up. I said you bet you're in for a bit, but I just want to mention this. I mentioned the microtransit project that we did. that was basically like as though Uber and Soltrans had a baby, right? So the same price as the bus, not quite Uber. You might have to walk to the end of the block in order to make it financially work. Everybody thought this was a crazy, like this will never work. You won't be able to afford it. It's not worthwhile. We did it, and it's been ridiculously popular for a couple of reasons in particular. Like everybody uses it, but the three groups that use it the most: teens, and it was extremely heartwarming because we have this guaranteed paid internship program. Teens use it to go to internships that they couldn't otherwise get to. Or they use it to stay after school and join an after-school club or something, go home a little bit later. But they have the mobility in order to take advantage of the opportunities. Women report feeling, 70% of women report feeling dramatically safer on this microtransit project than they do on regular transit. And then seniors. And at the beginning, people said they'll never use it. I said, well, they will if we make it worthwhile. And the research that was done on the project showed that it reduced social isolation by almost 70%, to your point. And I saw it in action myself. When I did the ARP came and we did training, like how to use the app and make the calls or whatever. And just even as I was sitting at the table, it was Andrea would say, "Oh my gosh, Paula, now I can just ring you, and we can have lunch spontaneously. Like I don't have to call paratransit 3 days in advance and make an appointment and act like I'm guilty because I'm not actually going to the doctor, I'm going to lunch. We can connect, we can talk about our soaps. I mean, and just to watch it in real time, that moment of seeing people realize that they had the ability now to connect all the time, at any time, was so incredibly profound. We often don't measure stuff like that. We're measuring fare box recovery or speed or that sort of thing. But that ability to connect and to connect to all the resources and your neighbors in the community is so important. So I completely agree. Sorry.
No problem.
Go ahead.
So-
Or Paula's.
Yes, so I'd like to go back to the tolling and the freeway pricing that MTC is coming up with. We were in a meeting here last year with the Metropolitan Transportation, and you want to talk about the attitude and the bulldozing that Flannery's doing? That's what they are doing to the average person. We had a meeting, they gave everybody 1 minute to speak on this issue. Their minds were made up, they were dismissive. There are a bunch of trendy millennials who can work from home with their Starbucks saying, well, we just need to redirect how people drive. Okay, well, we've had decades of urban sprawl and encouraging people to buy a house out here, now you're commuting. Now suddenly, we all have to stop commuting. Now I live in Vallejo, I work in Danville. I could no more live in Danville with the cost of living than, I just can't do it. So I have to commute over there. I can't make the money I make in Danville here. I would rather not commute. It's costing my husband and I, we both commute, with bridge tolls and gas, $1,000 a month. With new freeway pricing per mile, at what they were saying at this stage, could cost us then $1,500 a month just to get to work. So the dismissiveness, there's all this thing, oh, well, we're going to make it allowances for low income. I'm not low income. I'm middle class, working class. I'm a Democrat, and I believe in the environmental issues. I totally get our goals for 2050 and emissions and all of that. But you are trampling on the backs of working class people by the focus is we've got to reach this goal. And you're trampling over people. It's just not right. And they're not listening at all. It's not a matter of if this is a possibility. No, it's just when, and just get used to it. And I will tell you now, on principle, if we go to where I can't get on the freeway to go down to the next exit to the store, if that's going to be told, that is the day I leave California, because that is oppressive. And that on top of, you can't leave Vallejo except north without bridge, Highway 37 toll. Now you're going to toll the entire 80. You can't leave the city without paying money. What is that? I mean, come on, that's just ridiculous. So Democrats are not listening, and this is why they get a bad rap, and you want support, you got to help people. Not the people who are making no money. The people who will get the discount on that stuff aren't making my commute today because they can't afford it now. So it's just the average person, and nobody wants to hear it. Well, we've got to make these changes. We've got to meet these goals without even thinking about the people involved.
Yeah. So you're right. Let me say one thing. It's Democrats and Republicans. the road pricing stuff has been happening in the legislature with broad bipartisan support, sort of. Which is to say, like I think you've hit on something really important here, which is that all the decisions that are getting made on road pricing, as an example, are happening really at the regional scale, which is the one level. And no knock on the regions. I used to chair our MTC basically up in Yolo County. Those are the one layer of government that's not elected.
Yeah, but they're appointed, and when I looked at the board, they're all democratically appointed people.
Well, yes, but that's true for most of the Bay Area. But I guess my point is that the way that the legislature has set up road pricing decisions, the legislature doesn't want to make road pricing decisions because exactly what you said, that that's not what people want. The legislature doesn't push those road pricing decisions to the city councils and the board of supervisors because those folks are elected too, and that's not what people want. So they've located it at this regional scale. MTC is the great example. As a way to, I'm not making it some conspiracy, but as a way to put the decision where there's the least accountability to the public. So that has to change. Right? The road pricing as a strategy for tackling the climate crisis, okay, but there has to be consideration of the trade-offs, the impacts, all of that. And that can only happen in those parts of government where you're entitled to more than a minute, you're entitled to a full, and you can exercise your vote and say, hey, you know what, Senator, Mayor, you got it wrong. That's not what, I care about climate, but I care about the commute, and you got it wrong, so I'm voting for somebody else. Like, that's how our democracy is supposed to work, but it's not working that way. Road pricing is an untested strategy as a climate strategy in California. And in some places it's widely embraced, Southern California mostly, because it's reducing congestion. But what's happening here is very different. And it's based on the bridge model, which is now being applied to all the highways. In my own county, there's widespread opposition to tolling on 80 as well, for exactly what the reasons that you said. You cannot achieve the benefits of transit and alternatives, like you're not going to bike to Danville. I know Andrew doesn't bike to the college either. You're not going to walk. And that is not your fault. We've made, as you hinted, we've made decades and decades and decades of land use choices that don't support transit, they don't support walking and biking. So now you can't simply say, you know what, our bad, we got it wrong in government for 40 years, and now we're going to shift the burden through road pricing to you. You're already paying gas taxes and everything else. So I agree and think that both those decisions have to be made at the levels that you can hold politicians accountable. And second, that we have to get our house in order in government first before we start thinking that we're going to tell everyone else what to do. The legislature today is obsessed with banning things and mandating things, and there's a place for that. I don't want poison in my drinking water. There's definitely a thing for that. But when government only becomes about mandates and bans and shifting costs on other people, we failed. Our problems are more complicated than that. They're more urgent than that. And so I'm absolutely committed to working on road pricing decisions and the criteria and all that stuff, and also making sure that it's being done in a way that's truly accountable to the people that it's affecting.
In connection to infrastructure, there's been talk at the national level of possibly allowing for more flexibility in states to have more decision-making power on the highway trust fund funds. In connection with that, and in connection to all the discussion about the roadway pricing for Vallejo, when that was initially brought up, there was discussion about transit and additional modalities, but as the discussion progressed, it always seems to fall away, and there doesn't seem to be the proper investment in multiple transit modes in order to make such a transition even possibly viable. Is there any efforts to shift the conversation to build out transit modes that allow for multiple ways for people to get to places over time?
There is, but not, so the question's about is there a conversation or action being taken around building out the transit infrastructure to try, and the rest of the transportation system other than regular single occupancy vehicles, I assume, in the way that we're talking about. And so yes, there is, it's not enough. We're not pushing hard on this. There's one challenge, which is what we were just talking about, which is that because of the way we spread out land use, this was something I discovered when I was head of the transportation agency for the Sacramento region, was we said, well, the Chamber of Commerce came to us and said, stop spending money on transit and biking, just spend all the money adding more lanes and building more roads. And then the environmentalists came to us and said, stop building more roads and widening highways and building bridges, and it said, put all the money into transit and walking and biking. And I thought, oh gee, we're going to have another fight again. And the issue was, how are we going to spend the next $20 billion of transportation money? So that was the fight that was going on. So we looked at it and said, well, I think personally, I think we need both, but we should be moving more in the broader transportation mix that's more sustainable. But let's see. So I asked the scientists to model, like, how would each of these go? If we just did what these two groups said, in the extreme, what would happen? And we all thought that we knew what the results were going to be. The scientists, the modelers, the forecasters were going to come back and they were going to tell us, look, if you just build more lanes and more roads and more bridges, congestion will go down and air pollution will go up. So that will happen with that. If you just do sidewalks and bike lanes and transit, then air pollution will go down, but congestion will go up. So that was what we were all expecting to see happen, and that was going to help us start to get in a battle about it. That's not what happened. All the models and the science all came back and said, if you do all roads and bridges, congestion will go up, as well as air pollution. If you do all bike lanes, sidewalks, and transit, air pollution will go up, not down, and congestion will go up. And I thought, well, that could be right. These are big decisions. We're talking about $20 billion over here or $20 billion over there. And the answer came back as we were trying to figure out, what does this mean? Well, the answer was what we were just talking about, is that, well, it doesn't, you can spend $100 billion on transit, but if it's all low density cul-de-sacs running around, it doesn't work. You cannot run. I'm going to use Hamburg as an example. It's almost impossible to run an effective transit line that serves neighborhoods like that. And that's what we've been building. So when that's the existing land use pattern in a city or a county or a region, it's almost impossible to just fix it by doing the thing that you're trying to fix, which is what our transportation alternatives are. So we have to keep pushing for more ADUs, for more reinvestment in places like Vallejo, including Mayor Island. That's got to be job one, is investing in these communities and to make them more attractive for people to live and work and worship and play and everything else. That's got to be number one, because we have no hope of building more places out on farmland and then trying to build an effective transit system. And at the same time, we do need to move more of that money. Some of you know I'm close to the Secretary of Transportation. I was the co-chair of Pete Buttigieg's presidential campaign here in California. We're working hard on this, trying to figure out how to advance both of those objectives. Because it's not as though we snap our fingers and say people can't drive anymore, but that doesn't work. Right? You can't just order people to change their entire way of life and their economic circumstances and all of that. That never has worked. So we have to create viable, meaningful, affordable, frequent, reliable, safe alternatives, but in a big way, in a much bigger way than we have ever done. And running a bus every 45 minutes, but on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, but not on Monday and Tuesday, or the kind of bus system that's completely incomprehensible to a regular commuter. We have to make the investments to make those something that people choose. And so, yeah, using the Highway Trust Fund money, diverting some of those to those purposes, and the investments that we've been making out of the state's, climate cap and trade funds and others have to not just keep happening, but they have to get redoubled. And obviously, we don't have as much money in California as we had last year, but we will. We just got to figure out how to get our tax system and our budgeting system right. But we have to keep making those investments, otherwise we will have no hope of dealing with the climate issues that are a core threat to the environment, to health, and to safety, and to our economy here in communities throughout California, and create the kind of communities that are livable and connected and healthy. So I agree. I think we got to work on it. There is the conversation happening, but it's not enough. Mayor?
Thanks. I'm Mayor Venetia, Mayor Young Venetia.
Louder, please.
I'm Mayor Young Venetia, and I want to ask Chris, continuing on the same theme. There are a number of initiatives that come out of the state that get put on the cities to implement and enforce. And we don't have any say about it, and we also don't get any money for it. One example is this, the latest one had to do with garbage recycling, where we have to now have additional cans, and people looking into the cans to see if you're recycling the right thing in the right can. The state, routinely passes this kind of stuff, passes the responsibility onto the locals, but gives you no money for any of this. So it ends up costing the customers more for something they never really wanted. And another example, I guess, would be on the housing side. So each city is now required, well, has been required for a while, to have what's called a housing element, part of your general plan. And the state has, for understandable reasons, said there's a bunch of cities who haven't been building housing, including Venetia, where the attitude is, we like it the way it is, go somewhere else with your housing. And so the state has said, no, that's not going to fly anymore. Everybody has to take it on. Well, I accept it. I think that's legitimate. But then they follow it up with some very, some other bills that make it very difficult to take away all local authority, all local control over what happens in your community. So there was a development in Venetia where they wanted to build condos up near a historic area, and I tried to get a change in there's a bill called SB 35 that sort of allowed this to happen without any city approvals, as long as they met certain design requirements. I went to Senator Dodd, and I said, how about, would you be willing to introduce an amendment to maybe exempt historic areas from this requirement? And he said, well, nothing's going to happen without the approval of Senator Wiener from San Francisco. Senator Wiener writes the rules when it comes to housing. So I said, well, okay, I will go down and I'll talk to Senator Wiener. So I bought a ticket to a fundraiser that he had. And my background is in affordable housing. I'm very pro-affordable housing. So I sort of went down there, I bought the ticket, I introduced myself, and I didn't get 5 seconds into the discussion of what it is. He said, oh, you're a mayor? You're the problem. It's you guys who are the problem. He didn't want to hear about it, didn't want to entertain any discussion at all. So I guess my question for Chris is, if you now become part of this Democratic controlled Senate, how willing are you going to be to represent local interests as opposed to statewide interests that aren't always on the same page?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one of the reasons I'm running, honestly, is because I've worked in the legislature and worked for a bunch of the governors, so I understand the state level issues. But they don't land, and we were talking about this a little earlier, they don't land in communities like ours. They just don't. I mean, the intentions, the intensity of priority for housing, that's all right. But when you actually then have to execute at the ground, I think the legislature has, in the last couple of years, has just decided, well, for NIMBYs and mayors basically are, they're just blocking everything. And so we just need to say, NIMBYs and mayors can't, you're not welcome in the conversation anymore. Which is basically the citizens and activists and local elected officials. So we're waiving all of that, and you just have to do what we say. And obviously, if you really care about housing, that's very attractive when you first hear it. Finally, somebody's just going to do it. But the problem is, we're all going to be living here tomorrow too. We'll be here and we're going to have to keep growing a community. And so, unlike in San Francisco or Oakland, you know, the American Canyon has a very unique set of needs and constraints and possibilities, and it's trying to create a specific kind of community. Benicia already is one, and it has a heritage and a sense of place. It also has a great need for housing, and housing that's affordable, and it's got to grapple with that. But these are not, you know, it's kind of like rubber. They're not easy issues that you can just pass one bill about and say, okay, now everybody just do the thing, or we're going to put you in jail. You have to create the conditions where, on the ground, in the local communities, support for the construction of more ADUs, more affordable housing will happen. And the worst way to do that is to basically take a dismissive, elite attitude from Sacramento, saying that we know better than every community, every mayor, and every person who's ever attended a city council meeting or a planning commission meeting. Part of the reason I'm running is to try to make some sense of it. I feel like I can. I come from one of the cities in the district that is the best producer of housing and affordable housing. So nobody's going to, in the capital, nobody's going to say, oh, Cabaldon, you just don't support affordable housing. No, clearly we do. We're number 12 or 13 every year in producing it. But the problem is the state laws and the state rules and the state financing programs don't support communities like any of the communities in the Third Senate District. You think about West Sac and Vallejo, we're big, powerful, important cities, so is Benicia. But you think, how does Dixon deal with this? How does Rio Vista do with this? And nobody ever poses those questions. So I know Senator Wiener, he's yelled at me too. One of the reasons is why I think it's important that this race be focused some on housing is that part of the reason why he has so much influence is because he puts in the time and the effort. Like, he's made housing his issue. And I intend to do the same thing. We just haven't had a lot of legislators from the rest of California, the non-urban, non-heavily urban coastal parts of California, that have said, if there's a conversation happening on housing somewhere in the Capitol, I'm going to be in it. And that's what I intend to do, because we need to bring the perspective, the lens, the unique challenges that we face in communities like ours to that table.
Transit question, maybe a quick, you got someone behind you?
Yeah.
All right.
Hi, thanks. I so appreciate hearing from you, by the way, and really appreciate you speaking here, that you have familiarity with the legislature, with local issues, and I'm really glad. Now, Vallejo basically is a Rust Belt city, essentially, and that's pretty unusual in the Bay Area and even California. We're an anomaly, and we need job development. We need job training, and in general, I will say that the safety net that the state of California offers with unemployment insurance and that whole system needs to be updated. So I guess to put this in a question is, how can you balance maybe the greater picture of the entire District 3 with an anomaly like this that's not even recognized in the state of California? We're in the have-nots. So 15 miles away in Napa, it's milk and honey. It's a different world, and I did a career in Silicon Valley. That's milk and honey. We don't have jobs here. We don't have companies. And we're almost, I guess, a poster child of what could happen up North County if Flannery gets in and Travis Air Force Base decides, oh, we're just going to take our 14,000 jobs and go away. So, I want to register that we need help here, and we need help from our state representatives to see that we're hurting. We'll be coming up in a couple years on the 30-year anniversary of the Naval Shipyard closing, and we don't have much of anything to replace it. We need incubators or maybe state anchors or something. We need some special resources because we're really hurting. And with respect to the question earlier about getting hemmed in by toll roads, you know, it was like closing in here. It's dire. It's really dire. So how do you handle an anomaly where you're going to have an agricultural district, you're going to have a really affluent district, and then you've got, you know, the poor cousin with the tin cup down here going, please help us.
Well, I'm bullish on Vallejo, and maybe it's just because of where I come from. You know, we were even more the poor cousin and had all the challenges, and we broke through. And I don't pretend that I'm not running to be Vallejo's savior. I don't have half the answers, much less all of them. But I do. It's my passion. I want to be basically the 8th member of the Vallejo City Council, working in the community all the time, on every opportunity, opening the doors, getting the money, rerouting the transit line, like every piece that needs to happen in order to support that journey. You know, in my own community, the journey, I couldn't, if you had asked me when we started, how's it exactly going to go? I don't know. I had a plan. No, that's not what happened. You know, but we found an opportunity here, and then another one over here, and another one over there. The state is full of those opportunities. We just have to make sure that Vallejo is at the table, that we're seeing the needs that are here. We're lifting up all the voices in Vallejo. We want to be representative for the entire community, including folks that often have, you know, contrary things to say in the Senate as well, because you can't lift up a community without acknowledging the challenges that we face, and the opportunities that are out there to rush in. So I'm deeply committed to being a champion for Vallejo in the Capitol, and that means it will sometimes be carrying legislation specifically that Vallejo needs. Sometimes it'll be fighting for Robert's dredging money, or for the ferry, or for other specific projects. But it will also often be making sure that things like those funding formulas you were talking about earlier, for unemployment, for transportation, for environmental protection program, whatever, that they see exactly the context you're talking about. Okay, there's this grant out there. Can we put an extra 3 points in for communities that have experienced base closure, or, you know, some other economic dislocation? It doesn't have to say Vallejo in it, right? And then you build coalitions with other senators in the rest of the state to make that happen. So to me, that's the critical role of any senator from this district. Yeah, it's diverse. You're right. It has the entire Delta. You're really fighting over that. The Flandre project, if it continues to go on, that's going to be a major issue in the Senate too. We've got all the issues that NAP is grappling with, but that's the job. The job is to be present, to be immersed, and to be a champion. And there's no place in this district, including my own city, there's no place that deserves a champion more than Vallejo.
My question has to do with land use, and you're talking about recycling property, recycling land within Vallejo, and I have observed the downtown buildings that are that have absentee landlords, and they just hold on to the property and hold on to the property. And in the residential area also, there are properties that are just sitting there within this housing crisis. So what kind of legislation can be activated to disincentivize real estate investors from taking advantage of the properties, just swallowing them up and getting more and more and more? Come on, there's got to be some way to reduce that and make the legislation to deal with that. Can you think that there's a possibility of
So I think there's absolutely possibilities to deal with this challenge, and it's huge, and it's nationwide for sure. It's also throughout our district. Let me give an example that's not here, but it's in Sonoma, another part of the 3rd Senate District, just as a quick example, because in this case, it's a single company that's doing all of it. It's a company called Matson, and They have been for the last several years. It's not Flannery, we know who they are, but they are buying up every time a coffee shop or a restaurant or a bakery or a single family home or an apartment. Anytime anything comes open, they buy it. And everyone keeps asking, well, what are they going to do? They haven't done anything. They're not doing anything. There's nothing coming forward. And folks in the town of Sonoma are watching their downtown gradually but quickly become vacant. And it feeds on it, right? So, and you've hit on one of the fundamental challenges that's at play here, which is that if you want to do something in American society, if you want to build something, or you want to fence something off, or you want to create something, you have to go get a permit. Like you have to go to City Hall and say, hey, I want to build this thing, please give me a permit. And so the City Hall or the county can look at what you want to build and see what the consequences might be for the neighbors or for the economy or the community. If you instead are changing a community by doing nothing, you don't have to apply to do nothing. You never go to Vallejo City Hall and say, hey, I need a permit to not do anything at all, to build nothing, to not replace anything. And so we have a problem, I think, in the way that we've designed our system, where we have no accountability for doing nothing, when doing nothing might have the consequence of destroying neighborhoods and downtowns in the community. So I think, so I'd give two answers. One is we need to redesign that system so there is some mechanism to do that. And then secondly, tax policy is one area where some cities are already experimenting, and I don't know what the right answer is, but we do need to make sure we get the tax incentives right, so that simply amassing properties to declare losses and what have you and do nothing for a decade isn't the best way to make a profit. The best way to make a profit should be investing in the community and creating great places, and our tax system is not currently producing that. Thanks so much for the question. Yes?
Maybe a quick answer. For 20 years, I commuted up to, there's a lot of big employers in Napa who live in flat, it's more affordable, like that Danville. There's Napa State Hospital is a huge employer, the college, all the wineries, there's a lot of other stuff being built in the industrial park. And I believe, I've worked this for 25 years, I'm pretty sure there's railroad tracks that go from Vallejo to Napa, and it goes right between the college and the state hospital. And everyone gets in their car by themselves at the same time, and the commute up to American Canyon is just a nightmare. If there's an organization that could look into having a commuter train go from Vallejo to Napa, and maybe up the valley?
So there is, and I think Mayor Youngblood, Mayor McConnell's still here. It's on somebody's plan. Right? We should look at this. Because what you've hit on is not just the Napa Vallejo corridor, but there are some existing, not really rail lines, but rail assets, right of way, a track here and there, going in every direction. Vallejo, if you end up voting for California Forever, you can take a train there potentially. There is a line, but there's no tracks at all, and rail is expensive to build. So and as I mentioned earlier with the smart, connecting to smart rail in Sonoma County, it's definitely viable. It's just very, very, very expensive. I've tried using existing tracks for transit, and it turns out to be more complicated and expensive than it looks. But it's got to be on the table, right? Because these old rail lines, in many cases, are our best shot. They are very expensive, but they're cheaper than the next best thing. And so we've got to and we have to also make sure that they don't get built over before we get a chance to potentially, reactivate them again. Mayor?
Question is, what are your views on gun control?
Yeah.
All right, great applause for the question, which is on gun control. I'm a strong proponent of common sense gun laws, working with Congressman Mike Thompson and Moms Demand Action. We have we have some of the strongest gun laws in the country, and they work. Our gun violence, our gun deaths are dramatically lower than other states. They're not perfect, and they're also under constant attack and threat from the courts and from other states as well. But there's still a lot we can do on safe storage, which we've made some strides on, but we need much more work on safe storage. We need to stop doing all the school drills that invite fourth graders to imagine that if all adults in their life started to shoot them, that whoever thought that was a good idea, it's not a good idea. But we need definitely on the storage side, we have to enforce our laws around gun shows. I know we've got one here today.
Yes.
But around illegal gun shows, we need to crack down on the interstate trafficking of guns as well. But we're going to have to keep, just like on reproductive freedom, the big challenge for California is every time one of our laws gets struck down by a federal court, we're going to have to come back with a new attempt. So I have some ideas, and I work with a lot of the gun groups around those policies, but really, it's not quite defense, but we have to keep creating because we're the national leader on this topic. And we've seen, like in Napa, for example, the shooting the mass shooting that we saw there 2 years ago, our district feels it, and we've had so many, not just drills, but real threats in my own local schools. And throughout the district, this is not a way to live as a society or for children to live. And we can do it in a way that protects responsible, safe gun ownership, for sure. But we do need to stay on this issue and make sure that we are preventing the gun violence that is ravaging so many of our neighborhoods. Oh, I didn't have a question. I'll come to you next.
So one of the things that I hear from people who oppose you is that when you were mayor of West Sac, you just rolled over a lot of poor people. How do we respond to that? What is the actual truth of that, and how do we talk to people?
Yeah, so the truth is the exact opposite. Because the people of West Sacramento today are the same people as when we started, but we have a lot more neighbors. So what we did not experience, which a lot of cities have, is that sort of mass displacement, bulldozers coming in, tearing down, mobile home parks and apartment complexes and what have you, so that some restaurant specializing in Brussels sprouts can move in. Right? That we did not. That's not been our history. Now we were fortunate when we started that we were a city with a higher rate of home ownership among our poorest residents. Right? So our housing stock was super cheap because nobody wanted to live in our city. So it was very, very cheap. And if you didn't have a lot of money, then we were a place that you could still afford to buy a home. And so as our renaissance began, we started with a lot of families in our poorest and oldest neighborhoods, starting with equity in their home, and they owned it. We had some renters, but we also realized we have a lot of land, old parking lots, old factories and that sort of thing to build on. We don't need, and we're not going to allow people to just tear down housing. So we didn't have the kind of displacement that you see in many, many other communities around the state. We did have some folks move, but if you ask them today, they'll be like, well, I sold my $60,000 home for $300,000, and I sent my daughter to college, and now we're moving to Idaho or something. So it's not that people didn't leave, but if they left, they were leaving because they had economic opportunities that they saw as better, not because they were displaced or bulldozed. And I think too many communities don't get that. They're chasing this, the brass ring of Whole Foods. And one of the things I was proud of is that we grew and changed, not slowly, but steady, right? Because the way that gentrification hurts people the most is when it happens almost overnight. And a community can't absorb the growth. People can't adapt. They can't sign leases. They can't do anything because suddenly just Flannery or somebody's come in and bought everything all at once. So we were able to succeed in that way, and I'm really proud of that. And Harvard did a study a couple of years ago, and we had one of the highest, I think we might have been the highest, but definitely one of the highest rates in the region of people living in our city who had lived in our city 20 years ago. And so it was an opportunity atlas map, if you ever see one of those. And that was the first stat I wanted to look at. people still here? Like, how is that? And that the children of people that were there were also still in town. And to me, that's the best marker of whether your community is healthy and whether you're doing a good job as mayor. And so, yeah, no, like the Planned Parenthood mailing that tried to say the opposite of the fact that Planned Parenthood endorsed me. It's exactly the opposite of the truth. Eric.
So, to give an idea, I know that it's going to be more complicated, especially in the case of fire associates is going to work because they use multiple different companies by plan, but it sounds like, and that's an example or others like that, where one company is buying a number of properties, at least in a given area, the deeds come in, you have some sort of name on it. Can't you just, as a municipality or county or that sort of thing, set a maximum percentage of the land of a given area for one organization to own?
So, so the question was, couldn't a city just basically put a cap on the amount, on the proportion of, or the amount of land that any one company could own? And the answer is no. I mean, under California law, you couldn't do that. The cities don't have the power to control land acquisition in that way. And in the Massey case, we knew exactly what it was. So this is the challenge, is that we don't have any tools at all right now. And not just at the city level, the state doesn't have any tools either. And as we saw with Flannery, the Air Force didn't have any tools. I mean, it's that crazy. And I think in part it's because so many of our land use laws and our public engagement laws, they're designed, for Jimmy wants to build an apartment complex, on the corner of Tennessee or whatever, that we'll get all the due process and everything. They're not designed for 15 billionaires. They're not designed for, when Flannery first came out, like, is this the Chinese government? It wasn't the Chinese government, but if it was, how would we have even known? And what could we have done about it? So our laws have not kept up with the kind of the concentration of wealth and power in the world since we wrote a lot of these laws in the 60s. And so we got to update it because your idea is one that sounds sensible but could not be done by any city in California. Okay. And the mayor's got more written questions.
Can you speak to the issue of unfunded mandates when the state passes laws, but enforcement must come from the cities?
That sounds like it was either Mayor Young or Mayor McConnell.
That was mine.
Maybe both.
I got one of my own in a while.
So naturally I'm opposed to that practice, and so are the people of California. The Constitution of California says the state will not mandate cities or counties to do anything unless it pays them for it. So what Mayor Young was describing, like you're not allowed to have a law in the Constitution that says every city, starting tomorrow, every city will inspect everyone's trash can as it's on their driveway to see if there are banana peels in the wrong container. The state's not allowed to do that because it's a huge cost to each city to accomplish it, just like Steve said. And so the Constitution says you cannot do that unless you reimburse the city for those costs. So that's the Constitution. That's what the voters have approved. That's not the reality, though. The reality is that every single day the legislature is passing legislation that shifts all of these responsibilities onto cities and counties, frankly also onto companies and nonprofits too, but onto cities and counties in particular without reimbursing the costs. And they'll find a little accounting trick here, another trick over there, or they'll make it sort of voluntary, but not really, or they'll say it's voluntary, but if you don't do it, anybody could sue you for not doing it, but we're not making you do it. Right? There's a trick after trick after trick after trick that the legislature uses to get around it. And the consequences are that we see local governments having to put tax measures on the ballot just to stay afloat, because they keep getting more and more costs, huge costs that are imposed by the state without the state meeting its constitutional obligation to pay for it. And so I'm, as a mayor, completely committed to fixing that. I think that many of the state's mandates are a good thing, but they should come with the resources in order to make it real, because not every community is sitting on millions of dollars just waiting for the state to tell them how to spend it. And there are trade-offs that have to be made, as the mayor was saying. If I'm hiring somebody to look at those banana peels, then there's not somebody working as a community service officer dealing with mental health issues in the police department, for example, right? We have to be able to make local choices as well, and that's why the Constitution is supposed to protect us, and the legislature has to do a better job of respecting that and supporting local communities and their fiscal health. Yes, let's.
Okay, thanks. Quick, speaking of unfunded mandates, maybe this would be a funded mandate, and I apologize if someone already asked it. But what talk has been done about requiring cities and counties to have their buildings and schools and universities with the two biggies, which is solar panels and moving as quickly as possible to electric vehicles. So can I put money behind a mandate like that?
Yes, and this is an area where the legislature has already led, and so that there are existing now state policies, both from the legislature, from the Air Resources Board, that do both require an increasing number of solar panels and electric vehicles in public facilities, and provides at least some competitive grant options in order to pay for it. It's not enough, but it's also an area where a lot of cities and counties and school districts and colleges and others are ready to do it. I mean, they're moving forward on it as well, just like some of the other, like California's electric vehicles. So those policies there, but we need dramatically more. I mean, we're not anywhere close to taking the actions that we have to, given the depth of the climate crisis that we're already feeling. So those are very, very important projects and policies and investments. I support them, but we also shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking that those alone will get us to where we need to get to on climate.
And she's.
That's okay.
Oh, yes.
We're talking about affordable housing, and I've been in the mobile home business for 23 years, from South San Jose all the way to the Oregon border. And now I still try to do it over the telephone if I can, and if not, somebody will take me out there because I don't drive anymore. I noticed that, you know, you're talking about a lot of the cities like yours doing these things. We have people here in this city because when I moved here 10 years ago from the Napa Valley, but not everybody's wealthy there. You know, it's come a long way. Napa's come a long way. Of course, I knew Bill Dodd because he had the water business up there, and my friend Tom back there. And, you know, they've chimed in for the mobile homes. They're around like in his district. I've even been to West Sacramento. But, you know, I've got a big mouth, and I'm not afraid to say things. I think that everything starts when you have a decent city council, that they don't run to get their things done. In almost every city, they do that. Their agenda is to get their thing done, whatever it might be. But I think that with the affordable housing, we need to make that happen because, like you said about the seniors, it used to be that mobile homes were very affordable. And now, about 3 weeks ago, there's a chart that they're off the rockets. And the land rents, and if you don't have rent stabilization, you're stupid. I mean, to live in a mobile home, why would you live there and pay $1,800 a month when you could live in an apartment and get a garage and have somebody else fix all the damn things on your property? You know, why don't you do that? So, you know, mobile homes in Vallejo are still affordable for some people. But a few years ago when I first came here, I just thought I would retire from all this mobile home business, and then people came to me at my house that I moved in and started up about the rent stabilization. Did you know that the council dismissed the rent stabilization? And I said, well, no. I said, I've always known Vallejo to have a rent stabilization. And I don't care where you live, if you live in San Jose or Dixon or Benicia should have rent stabilization. Because what's happening at these businesses is these conglomerates are buying all these mom and pop operations up, and they're becoming 60 and 70 parks that they own. And they become very haughty, they have their own situation. But I vote for rent stabilization. You said a lot of things are broken that they should be fixed. There's one that's really broken that should have a lot of attention from seniors is HUD, is Section 8 housing. It is broken to be broken to be broken. It's an awful thing because, like this place down here, that they call themselves a housing authority. Are you kidding me? They don't want to talk to me because I'll tell them what a housing authority does. All they have to do is just drive a little bit up to Napa and see what it really does. Even in American Canyon, I lived there for 5 years, and they started very small, and they always said, oh, we'll never have any big, large hamburger stores or more than one gas station. Well, hell, look at it. I mean, the property's very valuable there, and now they're building that lot up there. It's not affordable. They do have mobile home parks, but they're a little bit expensive, so most people can't live there. But I think what I'm trying to say is I think that all the groundwork has to be done in a city that they have a decent council. And people here have a tendency of voting for friends, and they want to come to your house and say, well, I'm going to do this and this and this, and they're one vote. And then they get up there and they argue about it, and the next thing you know, there's a backdoor deal done. I'm not in favor of the backdoor deal. It's been done here by your opponent, on and on and on, and everybody here knows that, and they know who it is, Miss Viagra. And, you know, it's a shame because this is a beautiful city that could really blossom. But these people are putting a damper for their own agenda instead of opening their eyes and using common sense and listening to other people, going to other cities to see how they made things. That's what happens with cities, is they go and they look at these cities and say, how the hell do you do this? You don't, you know, a big corporation is not an Indian casino. You know, it's not. And, you know, people say, oh, no, it's coming, trust me. A casino's either going to be out there on Mare Island, or they're going to build up there for the car districts. And they'll probably start up there because they're feds, and they don't have to have any permits. They can do what the hell they want, those Indians. But these over here are the Cache Creek people that haven't even developed or started developing that because they wanted to do a report on the seawall that's crumbling, that we should be fixing because it's part of the infrastructure. And then we come to you for help, just like I come to Bill Dodd, you know, and now I can't come to Bill Dodd because he's endorsed Viagra, and Bill's still a friend of mine, Tom's still a friend of mine. I don't care who the hell you're voting for. But you know something? Vote for somebody that's going to do something. That, I mean, you're really intelligent. You have done the things that most cities dream of, like Vallejo. You know, we need to have some strong people, and we have a lot of smart people here, but they don't want to be mixed with the dumb people because it's bad. It's bad, and if they can't see that, there's something wrong with them. There really is something wrong. And until we fix that, and you get into that position and help these people, all of them, and suggest that they go to other cities that have developed, like Napa. When I first went to Napa, which was 45 years ago, the joke was there's more paint on the walls than empty buildings, because you could rent a building for $200 when I went up there. But now it's $20,000 on the main street. I mean, you know, it's going on. The train is a great idea. They should have pushed that longer ago. because I'm from Portland, Oregon. And, you know, they were very forward in Portland in their thinking. And people bitched about it, had the light rail system. Well, it started downtown, and I have a store downtown that interrupted the business, but, you know, they came to me and said, you know, we're gonna do this, and this is what we're gonna do, and maybe we can give you some extra money, keep everything going. And they did all the merchants. And now the light, the train goes clear out past Gresham, which is a long way, and they run every 15 minutes. And they're clean, and people just don't sleep on them. You don't have to be afraid of getting on the train. You know, I mean, people here have to wake up, because it's all starting here with a good city council that runs things and not for their own agenda. And I'm sorry to take your time out, but you know, it's the way I feel. I think you're the excellent candidate for having the senator job out of all the people that are running, the 3 people. Ms. Viagra, she has her own agenda, and she'll cast you aside. She cast me aside because I had a big mouth on the rent stabilization, which was their fault, and cost the poor people $10,000 to hire an attorney and 2 years and 5 months to put it back in. When the mayor at that time, Mr. Brendan, said, we took it away. And they should have put back, all they had to do was get a signature, but no, they made us crawl through hoops and hoops. You know, it's like the permits here. It's the same damn thing. Manny's on the water. They want to open. It's been a year. They're finally open. It's ridiculous. And you know what? They need your help.
I will say just, I'm really glad you mentioned mobile home parks as well, because this gets also, you know, to Paula's earlier question, mobile home parks, because a lot of cities obsess about the big, bright new projects. Like, can we get the auto mall or the giant or the 27-story condo tower? We have assets in our community, especially housing stock, that's diverse, that serves a broad range of the community, that are great neighborhoods, connected, the kind of social connections that, the kind of social connections we were talking about earlier, and building the revitalization of a community from its assets is really critical. And so many communities get trapped because they're waiting for the next golden lamb to come out of the sky, and those come, but you don't want to. You want to go to limb until you have your own house in order and you understand and appreciate what is already great, maybe unvarnished, but great about you. In order, because you can't meet those other projects with the self-respect, with the strength, with the negotiating power that you need unless you do that. So I'm really I'm glad that you mentioned. We're talking about ADUs and other housing projects, but really appreciating the housing stock that we already have.
They never used them for the federal housing. You don't count the mobile home parks. And they should, because there's some voters there. There's people that pay taxes that have brand new mobile homes. I mean, you know, they have to look at this situation. You know, that it's really important to them. It's just very important that we put the right person in this case.
Can you tell me something?
Well, we're running about 3, so.
Okay. Can we take one last question?
Sure.
Did you have one also?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So so I've been listening to all the conversations and things that you've been wanting to do. I'm gonna make sure you're still in camera. And the thing is that I've heard that you mentioned Whole Foods earlier. You mentioned affordable housing. We've heard individuals talk about not having industry here in Vallejo. We've heard many different, all these other things, bringing jobs into Vallejo. Question is that from what you were doing in Sacramento, the Sacramento area, what were you doing to bring in sustainable industry? What were you doing to bring in corporations, or not corporations, but businesses that would source from the local economy and to keep the money into the areas that you're at? Because when you talked about Whole Foods, Whole Foods is a corporation that's going to ship their money out of county.
We don't have one of those.
We have Davis Food Co-op, you have the Sacramento Food Co-op, there's not a co-op down here in Sonoma County. So what's your thought on things like that, like food deserts, like we have, not a choice that we have to go to the big box. So what is your ideas or thought processes on encouraging local businesses to source from local and keep the funds inside where there's been?
Great. So I'm a big fan of all of the above approach to community development and to economic development more generally. And I say that partly, IKEA is in my city. That was one of the big projects that we did. So that's not small at all. And it's from Scandinavia, so it's not quite local. But it was a powerful generator of both revenue for the community to support public services, transportation, police and fire, all of that. And it caused a lot of other folks to say, hey, this is kind of a cool place if they have an IKEA. Maybe I'll start a restaurant. Or maybe that brewery I always wanted to do. Or maybe this is where I'll open my dress shop. It was a way to change the sense of what was possible in a community for small business too. I think both are really, really critical. I also think there's a role for play and for innovation in economic development. I mentioned breweries a second ago, and I'll give it as an example because it also gets to this regulation question that you mentioned, there were a few, I think they were all guys, a few guys who worked at our version of MTC, just to drop back to the tolls. And they came to me and said, we want to start a brew pub. This is now 12 years ago, so this was early in that whole craft brewing movement. So we want to start one. And I said, okay, let's try to find you a place. And we were looking at our downtown along the riverfront. So we can't afford any of that. That's just not possible. So they came back a couple of weeks later and said, okay, we found a location. It's in the industrial zone right next to the port. I said, great. That's just an office park. It's not like there's no cement plant there anymore, so let's do that. Then they said, but the city told us we can't because you're not allowed to serve food in an office park. No food or drink is allowed in because it's an industrial zone. And I thought, well, so we can't do it. We can't do this project. Well, okay, but why do we have that law? Why do we say that? And it struck me that we have this law because when we all wrote our zoning codes 100 years ago, back then, there was no Clean Water Act, there was no Clean Air Act, there was no regulation at all. So the best way to protect public health was to say, under no circumstances shall there ever be anybody opening their mouth to take a drink or eat any food in an industrial zone. But industrial zones today have lots of different things happening in them. So there's no danger in drinking a glass of beer next to an accountant's office in an office park. Other than making some bad financial decisions. So we look at it.
I guess the other thing that I forgot to ask about is that when you talked about affordable housing.
Yes.
And you're talking about those businesses and you've plopped another community into a local area. What about making some of those facilities multi-use?
Yeah.
And so that's the whole kind of thing is encouraging developers to say, not think about just homes. Think about using the first floor for business, like you said, the coffee shop or whatever. Making sure, what's your thoughts about pushing that agenda?
I have always been a big champion of this, so that we should be integrating. In some ways, it's what I was just talking about. Because 100 years ago, we said industry goes here, office goes here, shopping goes there, people go here, and it will be a strict separation of uses. You can never cross them over. And we're one of the only countries on the planet that does that. Like people come back and they're like, I just went to Paris, I just loved it, or whatever. And why don't we do that here? Well, because that's illegal here. Like you're not allowed to, in most zoning classifications, you're not allowed to live anywhere near where you might work or shop. By law, right? So there is a movement happening in California and the rest of the country to do away with that, to modernize zoning, to encourage rather than to make illegal and criminalize that kind of mixing. So I think the evidence is very strong. You get better environmental benefits, you get better social connection, you get stronger small businesses, and you get people who are happier. Like I live a block away from the coffee shop in my neighborhood, and the former city clerk, who's a longtime friend of mine, she's retired, she lives around the corner. Like there's a neighborhood where, and she now has a small business where she's using a 3D printer to make, I'm not sure what she's making. She's making something and selling it. But the point is that all that activity is happening together and it supports one another. So if you really want a strong small business community, but also if you want to create a real sense of place and community, you have to mix up those uses. So we need a lot more zoning reform at the state level as well as in local communities to make that the norm. Paris is an example. There's no zoning at all. Each building, if you go to Paris, you can't, like every building looks the same. Or within a district, they're all pretty much identical. But you can do anything in it. You can have a shop, you can have a restaurant, you can live there. You can't manufacture oil or cement or no heavy industry. But you can do anything. The point is, the building's going to be there forever. Whatever the activity is, that's for the now, that's for the present, but the building will be there forever. In the U.S., we went a different way, and we said, if you're going to have a McDonald's, it has to look just like a McDonald's. Golden oranges, it's going to be this color. If I around the corner, I know exactly what used to be Pioneer Chicken, even though it doesn't exist anymore, but the shape of the sign will always be that, because we decided that the built environment, the places that we live, need to be designed specifically for whatever's in them at that moment. And instead, we should be creating places that are resilient, that are adaptive, and that mix and create that sense of community. So thanks for the question. I already promised the last one, so and I know you all have been. I'm so grateful that you're spending your Saturday afternoon with us. Let's hit it.
So you probably noticed in Vallejo that we have a lot of unhoused people. It's a major situation and problem, frankly. It's also, and as I understand it, since the 1970s, I've heard that something like 90% of the facilities that used to be available for mental health and substance are gone in the entire country. And I'm going to repeat that because it's so astounding. 90% of the facilities that used to handle mental health and substance are gone in the entire country. So now, there were problems that had to be addressed, and so the state here eliminated mental health at the statewide level, and without any funding and without any blueprints, said, okay, little local communities, you're on your own, go fix it, no idea. So we are still in that state of all these local communities reinventing the wheel, trying to figure out how do you handle this, where do you get the money. Now Newsom has elevated it as an issue, some money has come down, but still without the guidelines and a blueprint for how to make this successful. So you still have all of these communities going, does this work? No, this doesn't work. And really, it seems to be an issue that needs to be elevated above, say, a city level or even a county level. And I'm not saying to build an institution with bars and lock people up, but when they do census surveys of the unhoused population, statistically, roughly across the country, about 35% have some sort of mental health issue, roughly. And another 35% have some sort of substance issue. There may be overlap, I don't know. But if you dealt with just the mental health and the substance from a state level, it would really be helpful. And because it's insane that at the local level, we don't know what to do, and we don't have the funds for doing it. We were just absolutely grappling. And our situation here is less severe than, say, Oakland, Los Angeles, San Francisco. It's a crazy problem. So I'd like to hear your comments about that.
Well, first, I agree with you. And you've hit on, I think, what is probably the most fundamental gap. And we have been spending in California billions of dollars on homelessness in the last several years. without the results that we were hoping for, to put it mildly. We've learned a lot, and we have closed some of the gaps, but the number one gap that is out there right now is the one that you mentioned, which we do not have enough treatment beds, residential treatment that is more than just a drop-in clinic at the county office on Tuesdays or whatever, but real residential, mostly residential treatment. So you're more likely to be getting your treatment in a sort of ad hoc in the back of a police vehicle than you are in a treatment bed. And so, in order to make the investments that we're already making in things like long-term shelter, permanent supportive housing, for other social service, for employment and other things, for those all to work, we need to close this one gap. I'm not saying it's the magic bullet, because it's not the magic bullet, but we've tried a lot of other things that still have potential. Don't give up on all the other things that we've been investing in, but they cannot work without, as you say, grappling with the major disinvestment that happened in basic treatment facilities and treatment beds for veterans. So that's why I support the governor's proposal, Proposition 1. It's trade-offs, like anything else. It's moving money from one set of mental health programs to another. But I think in the moment that we're at right now, this is the key gap that we must fill in order to bring to life the interventions that we've been making to try to tackle this challenge for that house in our communities. So thanks for the question. And I think
Taping, I see you taping it for people who either couldn't be here or came in late. Is there any way they can watch this?
We'll get back to you on that.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll turn it back to Jimmy, but I want to thank everyone for coming out. Again, I know Saturday afternoon is a big deal, and I know a lot of you have spent a lot of time thinking about this race and are super active in trying to strengthen our community here in Vallejo, and I'm very, very, very grateful for the questions, for the accountability. Looking forward to working with you on all the great things that we talked about today. But thank you so much, and Jimmy, thank you for organizing. I know other folks have been helping with this as well. Thank you, Mayor, for moderating, and for Paula McConnell, she always texts me right before. And you're wearing a coat and tie, aren't you? Don't worry, I'm wearing a coat and tie.
Okay, he has a very uphill battle here. And the only way that his opponent can not prevail is for each of you to go out and talk to 20 or 30 other people and commit them to voting. This is going to be a tough fight. And you know where the money and the power is already lined up. This is an uphill battle. So you can't just come and listen, nod your heads, go home and vote for him. That's not going to be enough. You're going to have to hit the phones. You're going to have coffee hours. You're going to have to work with this candidate for him to survive. So thank you for being here. Chris?